Here we are at the first ever, hopefully last ever, virtual Zoom Illustrious Clients meeting on May 9th, 2020. I want to welcome everybody here. This is so great. I cannot believe that everybody's here and this thing is working, which is super. And it's really good, honestly, it's really good to see everybody. We had to miss the April meeting because of everything that's going on, and that was a real grief. We tried to hang on to that for a long time, but events conspired against us. I think everybody who's here has actually been to a meeting before, except for Ann Lewis's cat, and I see that. Do we have any newcomers here? I don't think so.
I'm a newcomer, Steve. Bob Sharfman. This is my first meeting.
Oh, well, great. Where
Andy
are
and I
you?
are newcomers as well.
Bob, this is your first meeting? I could have sworn you were at one before. So why don't we do this? Why don't we, the newcomers, just kind of formally introduce yourselves to the group. Usually I would introduce you, but since we're in this format, it's nearly impossible. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves? Go ahead, Bob, you go first.
Well, I'm Bob Sharfman. I'm from Chicago, and that's where I am right now, hunkered down like an endangered species. And I've been a Sherlockian for a long time. In fact, my certificate to Hugo's Companions was signed by Vincent Sterrett, who I had the privilege of meeting a couple of times, although I'm not much of a scholar compared to him or any of you folks. I'm just a fan. And I'm glad to be join your group, and I'm looking forward to visiting with you very soon down in Indianapolis.
Great, we would love to have you here in person. So where are you? I'm looking, go ahead and introduce yourself. I'm trying to find you on my screen.
I'm Shelley Gage, and this is my first meeting. I discovered Sherlock Holmes in high school and have been a Sherlockian ever since. I'm going to let my husband introduce himself.
I'm Andy Gage. Also been Sherlock Holmes for most of my life, but a lot more recently ever since I've been married to Shelley. So,
great. Shelley, are you here in Indianapolis?
We're both in Muncie, actually.
Muncie, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Teresa and I had an opportunity to meet Shelley and her husband at the Minnetrista Center in Muncie. She gave a wonderful presentation about Sherlock Holmes to a bunch of non-Sherlockians. I think we were the only Sherlockians in the group. But she gave a nice history of the BSI and talked about the Illustrious Clients, and it was a very productive meeting, and I didn't get a chance to tell anybody about it because we were all ordered to stay home and shut up right about that time. And but this was Shelley spoke at a series at one of the Ball family homes on the Minnetrista Center here in Muncie. And they have a regular program of varied activities and speakers. And we were really looking forward to going to monthly presentations. And it turned out Shelley's talk was the last one until they had to shut down. So with that, I will bow out and let you continue. But welcome, Shelley. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
So let's see here. Does anybody have any announcements that they would like to share with the group? Well, it's been a while since we've all seen each other like this. And so it's kind of announcement time in the meeting. And anybody have anything new they want to share or talk about? Any news or announcements? I'll go first.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
Pam.
I was just going to say, Steve, and several people may already know about this, but Monica Schmidt is on Saturday afternoons, usually around 4 o'clock our time, is hosting a Zoom meeting to watch Sherlock Holmes movies, and with people talking about them and everything. And it's it's a great deal of fun, and if people are interested, I suppose the best thing to do would be to contact Monica via email or Facebook, and I don't have her email address, sorry, but it's a lot of fun. So
It's great. Is it like the comments? Like, is it like an episode of MS Mystery Science Theater
well,
2000, or is it?
yeah, kinda. It's but yeah, because there's a chat during the film. There's chat, so people can make comments, and then before and after the film, people can talk via Zoom. So
She showed mainly films, I think, right, Pat?
yeah, she hasn't showed like any television episodes
Yeah,
or anything like
I
that.
watched
Yeah.
one with you guys, and now I can't remember what one it was.
Great Mouse Detective. It was Great Mouse Detective, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I missed the Great Mouse Detective actually, but I saw the
Oh.
one before that.
Oh, The Sign of Four with Ian Richardson.
Yes, the Sign of Four with Ian Richardson. So we've been watching various things, and it's kind of fun because you can click the chat, and everybody's saying all sorts of crazy things on the right as it's going on. It's definitely Mystery Science Theater 3000 on the right. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we
Right.
watched Young Sherlock Holmes today, and everybody was talking about this is so much like Harry Potter. This is it was interesting.
That is. Well, great. That's through Facebook, and it's Monica Schmidt, and I've been invited for one reason or another. I've never been able to do it. Pam Wampler, I saw you raising your hand.
Yes. Has everybody been well?
Yes. For me, I've been great. So,
Good.
My allergies are making me crazy, but other than that, I'm fine.
yeah.
By the way,
I
just
broke my hip.
I just
Oh.
posted Monica Schmidt's email address on the chat screen for everybody.
Great. Thank you, Don.
Yep.
Great.
Who broke their
I'm
hip?
lucky enough that I can keep working.
Yeah, someone said they broke their hip.
Yeah, that's me, John Rabb. I fell off my bicycle a couple weeks ago, broke the hip.
Hmm.
Oh, ouch. I have my sympathy and my empathy.
It's healing quite nicely, though. Not bad at all.
Good.
Able to get up and move with a walker.
Very good. Well, I have an announcement. Let me just put this out there, actually. We are going to have, so I want to talk a minute about the rest of the calendar going forward. I got something here I need to refer to. Hang on a second here. So, we lost April. We're doing this for May. And, but going forward, our schedule starts to look better as far as actual participation. The state is opening up over the next month and a half or so, and that our next scheduled meeting is June 14th, and that's our Illustrious Clients field trip. And the field trip this year was determined at the last planning meeting we had, which, gosh, was in March, I think.
It's June 27th.
Is it June 27th? Oh, that's right. You're right. I'm looking at something else that has June 14th on it. It's June 20th. It's at the end of June. But by June 14th, we will be in phase 4 of Indiana's reopening, which means that zoos and museums will be at 50%. Social gatherings will be up to 250. All government buildings will be reopened to the public. Office employees can resume work at full capacity if they want to. Retail will be open at full capacity. Pretty much everything is nearly back to normal. Dining service can open to 75%, and recreational sports leagues can resume. So that's quite a ways away. It's 5 weeks or so, 6 weeks actually, until we get to the actual field trip. So the field trip is outdoors. The field trip this year was decided at the last planning meeting that we wanted to do a return to the bee farm, Hunter's Honey Farm outside of Martinsville for our summer field trip. And I just want to, put that out there and say that we're going to try and adhere to that. Of course, anybody who's uncomfortable at that point with, being out in public or something, I would encourage you to, do what you feel is right for yourself. But I'm hoping that by then we'll be outside. We won't be cooped up in a very confined space or anything. So I'm hoping that, we can start to resume, and certainly by fall, I think we'll be back in business. So I just want to put that out there as an announcement. And I wanted to see, what, what your thoughts about that are, and basically that's it. That's what I'm putting it out there. So if anybody has any feedback that they want to share about that or think about it, we can talk about it at a planning meeting. I think the next planning meeting is going to be this. I think the next planning meeting will probably be weekend after Memorial Day weekend, which will be the Memorial Day is the 25th. It would be the weekend of probably a traditional Sunday afternoon, May 31st at 2 p.m. in Zoom. And so go ahead and mark your calendars for that if you want to. And then we'll do it RSVP, and I'll send out the link to everybody. And we can look at going forward and make tentative plans. Of course, I will preface all of this by saying, things can change. Things can go really well, or they can go really poorly, and we'll just have to stay. Well, any plans we make, we'll have to make sure that we are flexible enough to adapt. So that's what I'm have to say about that. So, so I'm wondering, does anybody have any more announcements? Okay, now.
I have something that's either an announcement or a show and tell. Which way do you want it to be?
Well, we're going to do show and tell now if anybody has show and tell. So you can do show. You're up, Louise.
Okay. Actually, my show and tell is really more like a preview of coming attractions. This is my 2-volume set of, can you see it? The annotated Sherlock Holmes by William S. Baring-Gould. And it's still in its original box and original dust jackets, but it shows wear and tear because I look at it a lot. And it was published in 1967, and I got this brand new for Christmas that year. And I just want to say it changed my entire perspective on Sherlock Holmes and the canon and everything. And thereby, I would say it changed my life, because then I became a Sherlockian, not just a fan. And I am scheduled to be the next speaker in Steve's Sherlockian history series, or whatever it is. And that my topic will be this book and its place in the literature, and how it stands as one of the cornerstones of so many of the science societies, like this one. And I think everyone should read it and own a copy if you can find one. It's really terrific. So I'm going to give a much longer talk about this book the next time we actually meet in person. But I think to talk for 15 minutes or 20 or something on Zoom is just like more than you wanted to listen to today. So I will, you can look forward to that. So maybe in the fall when we have a regular meeting, I will do this, and hope to see you then. So that's my book.
Great. Thanks, Louise. Cal, did you have something?
It's actually 3 somethings that I stole from Kira a long time ago. She hasn't asked for them back, though. So, sort of as a side note, I like to play puzzle games, usually like on my PC, but usually like hidden object games and stuff like that. And Kira and I, having become friends through the clients, obviously share that in common. So what I ended up stealing from her and never giving back, sorry, KK, is a couple of PC games. And it is Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper that I've not started yet. There is Sherlock Holmes Nemesis, which I feel like has a connection to Sven Dupin, but I'm not. No. Whatever. I've lost names. That one I've also not started yet. The one I have is Sherlock Holmes: The Awakened, which combines Sherlock Holmes and Lovecraft. So I've been holding on to those, trying to finish them all up, and I don't think they ever made it into a show and tell, just because it's one of those strange things that's kind of out there. So that's mine.
So how old are these games? Do they run on a PC? Is that how they work?
They're not that old. I probably got them in the
looking at
early
this list.
2000s.
That's cool. Thanks for that. Anybody else have show and tell they want to pass along? Because I've got a stack over here. Yeah. Yeah,
I have a show and tell.
Okay, Bob, you go.
I'll put myself in the queue.
Okay, so it's going to be Bob, and then Mike, and then Ann.
Well, just today I received back.
Okay.
Just today I received back from a preservationist, because I know all of you are book collectors, and I collect them too. And I have Uncle Bernac by Arthur Conan Doyle. My wife gave that to me for my 40th birthday. I'm 83. It's in beautiful shape, but the reason why I love it so much is it has a handwritten note from Arthur Conan Doyle.
Wow. In the book, it's.
And those of you who think he couldn't write well, I can disabuse you of that because he writes very well. He dots all his I's, crosses all his T's.
Wow. Oh, look at that.
It's interesting because if you watch, it's a fabulous job that this company did. And it's in North Manchester, Indiana.
Wow.
It's called HF Group. So if you ever need a book restored, I highly recommend them. And they also put it in a nice box for you and everything.
That is cool. That's nice. Anytime you can get something inscribed by Conan Doyle, that's cool. That's great. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. Okay, Mike McSwiggan.
I just got back.
Hi. Okay, what I'm going to show is very tangentially Sherlockian. So some of you will get it, some of you won't. This came out 2 weeks ago. This is The Marvel Art of Frank Cho. Frank just got invested into the BSI this year. He does the covers for the program of the BSI. There's nothing Sherlockian in here at all, but I need an excuse to show people something stupid. So in the back, there is an afterword written by me, and it's called, What is the Deal with McSwiggan? And it's about why my name appears in all his art. And none of it is very flattering. It's pretty stupid. But the other thing I want to brag about is even though it's and he's got all this gorgeous artwork in it, he is making exactly no money on it because it's Marvel, and I'm getting paid my afterward. Not much, but I'm getting paid. So I remind him about it every time I talk to him. So anyway,
Wow.
that's it.
That's pretty cool. That is really cool. Frank Cho is like the #1 comic.
Oh, and he will be coming to a future clients meeting.
Yes. That's awesome. That is
He's promised to come to a clients meeting. It was going to be later this year, but it'll probably be next year now.
Hey, whatever. Frank is a cool guy, and he's like the I mean, help me with this, Mike. He's the #1 comics artist in the world right now. I mean, am I overstating that?
For covers, he's the highest paid cover artist at both Marvel and DC at the same time. And he actually works for every major comic publisher at the same time. He's got a brand new series coming out. I think it's going to be in the fall now. That's pretty exciting. He's actually getting ready to start working on something Sherlockian that I'm not allowed to talk about. Not to mention the program for the next BSI dinner too. So
speaking of the BSI dinner, here's the program that he did for the dinner menu, cover of the dinner menu for last year's BSI dinner. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's Professor Moriarty. And there's a Sherlock Holmes there, and it's quite, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Oh, here's the back. Back of the program always has the Musgrave Ritual on it, which gets read out loud. And here's a bit of artwork, him depicting a scene from the Musgrave Ritual. His work is fantastic. I just happen to have it laying over in the to be filed pile. So anyway, that's awesome. You're in everything. Cal? Oh wait, yeah, Cal, go ahead. No, I'm sorry.
My name is either hidden or out in the open. Yeah, not in the Sherlockian stuff, not in the BSI stuff, but in comic books. If you find like an issue he did the interior artwork in, I am hidden in there, and sometimes I'm actually in there with my name. Sometimes he draws me the way I look as a pharmacist with my name badge on it, and usually that's me getting hit in the head, killed, or throwing up.
That's cool. Okay, Ann Lewis, you're next.
Okay, I just had a couple real quick things to show. One thing I just noticed as I'm sitting here, if you look over my shoulder, the artwork on my wall is from my first and second books that Steve published, Wessex Press published. So it's from Murder in the Vatican and also the Watson Chronicles. So I just said, hey, look. The one thing I really wanted to show off, though, is for Cal. She gave me these glasses, and I don't know if you can see the engraving on it, but it's the Illustrious Clients logo. And it has my name on it. It has Lewis on the back. And so that's what I'm going to use to toast you guys today from Cal. She gave me those. But really, also, too, I wanted to show you something. These are all gifts, right? This came from Mike McSwiggan. At the Christmas dinner that I went to the Tankerville Club, he gave me 5 orange peeps. And they're stuffed peeps. And I still have the tags on them, Mike. They're plush.
Those are
they're
made
like
by the people.
Little
They're stuffed animals.
Okay, but they're not the edible peeps, but they're made by the same people.
They're little stuffed peeps.
It's cool.
No. Made by the same people. I thought it was like the coolest thing.
I would have
So,
gotten actual.
They hang out in my office.
I would have gotten actual orange peeps. Paul Herbert, when I was working on his library, he had some old peeps that somebody sent him, and they were probably about 10 years old, and they are so disgusting. I didn't want to do that to you.
Somebody gave me 5 orange pips.
I truly do appreciate it, Mike.
Okay. Peeps. And whenever I think of 5 orange peeps.
Oh, like real ones?
Was it you, Don? No, somebody's, yeah, the kind you eat. But whenever I think of 5 orange peeps.
Yes.
Was it you? And Don, I was just going to say, whenever I think of 5 orange pips, I think of you sending 5 orange pips to Jack Tracy. Do you remember that?
Jack Tracy.
Yes, and we claim no responsibility, but you realize, of course, that Jack Tracy is now dead.
Yeah. Coincidence?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, anyway, that's funny. Okay.
It's purely a coincidence.
Purely a coincidence.
Okay. So Lexi and I go antiquing every once in a great while, and at the antique shop here in Wabash, we ran across a couple of things that I absolutely had to have. One of them was this book, which is Ernie the Cave King and Sherlock the Smart Person and the Invention of Paper from Sesame Street. So I had to get that because it was hilarious. And then in the special glass case that the antique shop has, they have old medicine bottles. And being a Sherlockian, I had to have this certain one that is apparently contained tablets of morphine and atropine. So yes, those are my show and tells.
That's cool. That's good. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. I'm going to go now. Okay, first, I'm going to say that the spring issue of the Baker Street Journal has been published. Against all odds, here it is. And if you are a subscriber, it is either has or is landing in your email or your mailbox probably this week. I know it's arriving all over the place. So if you subscribe in the spring, then you are undoubtedly on the list and it's going. That means you, Pat. So it's probably on its way. So I know you had a question earlier this week. And then also I would recommend to your attention this fantastic, I think this is the third year for the Baker Street Almanac, which is this, I don't even know how to categorize this thing. It's an annual almanac, just chock full of, it's published by what's called the Green Bag, which is a guy named Ross Davies. And there's lots of familiar names in here, including our own Mike McSwiggan. Mike, did you work on it or write something? You wrote something for it, right?
Yeah, I have the chapter on Sherlockian societies. So it's mostly, mine's pretty easy. It's mostly record keeping. I started with what the BSI had and then just blew it up and I tried to modernize it. But I was recently offered an editing gig and I'm not sure what that's going to entail yet. There is another chapter I'm supposed to start. I don't think it's going to happen this year. We're probably going to wait till the following year. I'm not sure how much Ross wants me to talk about it. All I'll say is it involves chronology. I'm a chronologist. And so obviously I've got Vincent Wright involved with that too, but that's probably going to be like a year out now. But it's fun. Ross puts an insane amount of detail into everything he does, and this in particular. There's all kinds of hidden things.
He really does. This thing it's this very eccentric conglomeration of essays and accounts of events, reports from activities around the world. It reprints Peter Blau's entire annual run of his monthly newsletter, which is really comprehensive as to what's going on. And it's got, I do happen to have a article in here on a brief history on the origins of Wessex Press, Gassaging Books, and it's fascinating and it's so varied and eclectic that you can just dip into it. Plus, Mike is right. There's an insane amount of detail. There's this in the back. Let me show this. There's this pocket with this thing tucked in it. It's a survey. I haven't quite got this going and figured this out yet, with these nutty survey questions on the back of it. And that's pasted in the back. I mean, the amount of work on this is stunning. And there's some postcards. I think that's General Gordon. Yep. And there's a little promo card for a new periodical. There's a bookmark. These are all included inside this. So anyway, I really highly recommend it. It's really fun. I mean, it's been sitting on my end table next to in my favorite chair. Rudy and I sit here and look at this every night and just dip into it. So that's what we've been doing. It's really fantastic. Now, the other thing I want to share is I put a thing on Facebook, so some of you may have already seen this, but
Yeah, and
oh, go ahead. Who was that?
oh, I was just going to add that I don't know if he still has, but if you pre-order the Almanac, you get a Sherlock Holmes bobblehead. He's going to do a new bobblehead every year. And he's so crazy with detail. The box is a replica of Mortimer's honeydew tobacco. I mean, it's insane.
It is insane.
Maybe that's.
I got to pre-order if I can get a bobblehead. But now I don't have the whole set. Oh, what am I going to do? Terrible. Something else to chase. All right. Here's something else I want to show.
Oh, one other thing to throw in about the Almanac.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, they're doing super annotated versions of the stories. So kind of what Les Slinger did, but on steroids. And so each volume of the Almanac is going to have 1 or 2 stories, and I just got assigned a little chunk of a story for next year, and they're really fun to read. If you think the regular annotated goes down rabbit holes, these super annotated ones, you feel like you're on drugs, but kind of in a fun way.
Yeah, I was looking at that earlier today, as a matter of fact. It's crazy. All right, I want to share something. I've got I collect Sherlock Holmes books, and some of the rare stuff you can find, but you can't always find it in Dust Jacket. And that's okay, usually, but there is a way to compensate for that now. There is now a company out there called Facsimile Dust Jackets, LLC. And so I ordered 3 of them recently, and I got to tell you, they're fantastic. I mean, there was some talk online about, oh, they'll be passed off as original. No, they won't. They're clearly marked on the inside as a facsimile in very small type. But what it does is it takes a book like this, which is The Land of Mist, first edition Land of Mist. It's the last Professor Challenger novel. And it pretties it up by putting it in. I mean, the reproduction is perfect. I mean, it's as perfect as it can be. Oops, it's kind of glare. A dust jacket. Let me get this so you can see it. And they are fantastic. They're, and suddenly you can dress your book up in this dust jacket. I'll show you a couple of the other ones I have here. Here's another Challenger book called The Poison Belt. And it's a first edition, it's a first English edition, and I didn't have a dust jacket for it until now. And yeah, I don't mind it. It's a facsimile. It still looks beautiful. And if I ever dispose of my collection, people will know it's fake. But it looks wonderful, and it really dresses the book up. Another one I was really pleased to get, because this is hard to find, is Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. By Christopher Morley, and it's an early book and hard to find in dust jacket. And I've seen a dust jacket, and the reproduction is perfect, and they're not that expensive, and they come really fast. So if you have any books, it's Facsimile Dust Jackets LLC. They don't just do Sherlock Holmes; they do everything. And so if you've got a book that you've been wanting to sort of dress up on the shelves, you wish you had a dust jacket, check it out. It's pretty cool. I would just recommend it. So that's the end of my show and tell. Does anybody else have anything else they want to throw in here at the moment? All right. Okay, we're going to try.
Can you put that?
I just want to ask the question.
or
Those
contact
dust
information?
come with plastic on it?
I'm sorry? Wait. Yes, I'm going to put the, let me see if I can find the, I'll put the link into the chat.
Cal just put the URL in the comments.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah,
Oh, good.
Cal already did for you, Steve.
All right, super.
She's way ahead of you.
He is. That's good. Yeah, there it is. That's good. Super.
Well, he said dustjacketfacsimile.com.
No, it's no.
She
The
typed
company's called
something shorter.
the company's called Facsimile Dust Jackets LLC, but their website that's the website. So check it out. It's pretty cool. They have jackets for everything. Well, not everything, but lots of things. So hold on one second here. Okay. All right, everybody, we're going to try the Don Curtis mini auction. And we're going to give it a shot. Now, Don, I've misplaced the info, so I'm going to rely on you to tell us what we're looking at and what the opening bid will be. So the way we'll do this is there's 3 items. One of them is fragile, so we'll have to get it to you somehow. But 2 of them are books, and I will just mail them to you if you are the winning bidder. So the first, we'll start small.
I don't even remember what I had on that sheet. I do not even remember what I had on that sheet. That was 2 or 3 months ago.
I'll show it to you.
I know one of them was Lord Donegal's annotated facsimile edition of The Dying Detective.
Right. Well, we have.
Are you holding up a miniature book?
Yep.
Okay.
So the first one.
I do remember that.
Yeah, the first one is a miniature book. It's called The Baker Street Companion.
I don't remember it.
And it's got pages and pictures and everything in it. And it's pretty cool. It's really, I don't know if anybody's really into these, but it's pretty neat. Does anybody have an opening bid? Don, do you have an idea what you might want to put a bid on for this?
Seems to me I recall I put $10 on it.
Oh, shit.
Okay, does anybody have a bid of $10? It's in perfect condition. Looks brand new. I can't see. If you're waving your hand, if you want to bid on anything, you're going to have to just holler. No, it's in here. Here we go. Okay. Oops. Where did I go? Okay. Sorry, I touched something and everybody went away. Okay. So do we have a bid? If we don't have a bid, we'll just move on to the next one. We'll save this for a future thing. We'll return it to Don. Okay, no bid for this one. Next one, this next one is awesome. The next one is, it's a book. It's The Adventure of the Dying Detective, a facsimile of the original Sherlock Holmes manuscript with an introduction by Julian Simmons and afterward by Owen W. Edwards. This is a facsimile, this is like a reproduction of the Royal manuscript. And it's not quite like the BSI manuscripts. This is done at full size. It's reproduced at 100%. Let's see if I can get it up here. It's not really heavily annotated or anything, or it just is what it is. It's like looking at the manuscript.
Steve?
Yes.
This book was published back in the late 80s, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been early 90s. And it was done by Lord Donegal, who was a Marquess in England who was a member of the the Sherlock Holmes Society of London. And I don't know if he was a member of the BSI also or not. But this was like the forerunner of the BSI manuscript series. He did this on his own, completely independent of the BSI. And in later years, they started doing manuscripts with essays about the books. But this was a forerunner, and I think if memory serves me correctly, there were only 100 copies of this printed.
Right, it's extremely
They
rare.
were kind of expensive at the time, so it should be a good collectible.
It is collectible, and it's I think there was only one other manuscript done prior to this, and it was here in America. It was the Priory School, but this is amazing, and it's it does predate all the BSI manuscript series books, and it's really cool. It's sort of in the size of, he had a whole series he must have bought these notebooks or these writing tablets, because over in the Lilly Library, the red circle's on the same format, same paper and everything. So anyway, where do you want to set your opening bid, Don? This is a great thing.
Oh, $40.
That's a good price.
It's probably worth 100 or more easily.
Sure. Oh, yeah, easy. Anybody, do we have $40? If anybody is interested in this, just unmute your mic and give us a bid.
Yeah, I'll bid on it.
Okay, we have $40 from Regina. Do we have any improvement on $40? That's a steal. Do you have any improvement on $40?
Just remember, you didn't have to pay for your dinner meeting tonight.
That's right. That's right. And the bar's free. All right.
Man in the bar.
$40. $40 going once, twice. Sold to Regina for $40. All right. Congratulations. I'll get this to you somehow. Put this in the mail or something. Yeah.
Thanks,
Regina.
Thank you.
That's great. Okay, now here's our third item. And Don, you want to explain what this is?
Well, that was a gift. And I'm kind of ashamed of myself for auctioning it off. Gordon Speck made a present of that to me some years ago, and Gordon was a dear friend. This is an old beer mug from McSorley's Ale House.
Oh, hell.
In New York City. And it's an old one. They don't make them anymore. They haven't made them for years. I'm not sure exactly what this dates back to. Is there any indication, Steve?
No. I seem to remember these were like in the late 90s, maybe mid 90s.
Oh no, and it was more like in the late 70s.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. That's a guess. I mean, I can't document it, but
it's totally cool though. I mean, there it is. And McSorley's, tell us the significance of McSorley's with Sherlockian.
Well, McSorley's is the oldest continuously operating saloon in New York City, in Manhattan. They were founded in 1854, and they've only swept the floor 3 times since then. That's a joke.
Although,
Oh, it may be true.
It's a very
although it kind of looks like it.
dumpy place with a sawdust on the floor. Used to be, if you went in there to smoke and drink their ale, you just put your cigarettes out on the floor or flicked your cigar ashes on the floor. And there's a potbelly stove which provides heat in the wintertime. And they sell 2 kinds of ale, light and dark. If you want to go to the front room, you can get a drink at the bar. They have other liquor, hard liquor brands. But in the back room, where most people like to sit, they serve light and dark. And they have a very limited menu, usually about 4 or 5 entrees on the menu each day, one of which is a hamburger, another one maybe is corned beef hash, and a couple of other choices. A lot of people order the cheese and crackers, which get you a sleeve of saltines and some cheese. And you
get some hot mustard.
You dignify by slathering
Really
this
hot mustard, yes.
on it, which clears your sinuses. It works almost as well as the shrimp cocktail at the steakhouse at St. Elmo's. Anyway, that's
Or the mustard at the what's the German place? Forget.
Steve, what's on the other side? Can you turn it around?
It's a saying, and it says, ordinary people are as important as you are, whoever you are. Irish words of wisdom. McSorley's is an Irish word. Now, the other reason why McSorley's is significant to Sherlockians is it's really the only place that's left. It was one of the authentic favorite haunts of Christopher Morley, who's before the BSI was founded, he had a club that was called the 3 Hours for Lunch Club. And he would invite all his cronies and his pals and his friends to come to McSorley's for a 3-hour lunch. And that group morphed into the Baker Street Irregulars. So this is sort of, McSorley's is sort of ground zero for not just the Baker Street Irregulars, but for all active Sherlockian Science Society activity. It's really not exaggerating it much to say that the entire Sherlockian club scene was kind of born in McSorley. So anyway, this is a vintage mug from McSorley's, from the very origins of the Sherlockians.
I went over to the house. I almost went over to the house. We went over to the house and got the.
He's unmuted.
Who's that?
I put a bit in chat.
Okay.
I think that's Elisa. You need to mute your phone.
Yeah, I need to mute it. Hang on.
All right. So anyway, Don, did you have an opening bid for this mug? It's pretty cool.
Let's say $10.
I'll bid
Okay.
$10.
Okay, wait.
I already bid 30.
Wait now.
What?
Hold on. Oh, Pam Lee was 30.
35.
Say your name.
Woo. Joe Eckridge.
40.
Joe Eckridge, 35.
40.
Pam Lee, 40.
45.
Joe Eckridge, 45.
Okay, then let him go.
Really?
Yeah.
50.
Who said 50?
Mike.
Oh, it's unique.
I know.
Okay.
There it is. All right, we have 50. Mike's got 50.
55, Mark.
All right, 55. Man, nice.
60.
Look at you.
Don Curtis.
Don Curtis.
Oh, man.
60. Are we at 60? Or did someone bid something else? All right, Don Curtis is at 60. It's pretty cool. It's got this cool gold rim. It's all looking pretty cool. And the motto of McSorley's is here on the front of it. Says, "We were here before you were born." Way before you were born.
Even before I was born.
And Don is old. All right, we're at $60. $60 going once.
65, Mike.
Mike McSwiggin, 65.
Being way beyond my interest.
Do we have any improvement on 65? All right, 65 going once, going twice, sold for $65. Awesome.
Congratulations,
Great.
Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Right, terrific. So, Louise, how should they, or Don, how do we handle the payment here?
Does everybody have PayPal? If you got my email, just send it by PayPal. Or if your bank uses Zelle or some other automated payment system, my email is in the client's directory. If you don't have one handy, it's don221b@yahoo.com.
Hey, Don, you might have said, but how did you come by that mug?
It was a gift from Gordon Speck. Gordon has been a Baker Street irregular for many, many years. Back, I don't know when he was invested, back in the 60s or 70s. And he bought it at McSorley's back in the day when they sold them. And he had a lot of items here and there. And every once in a while, he was just that kind of, if you knew Gordon, you knew how generous he was with anything he owned. If he thought you would enjoy it, it was yours. He gave me a lot of Trollope books over the years and anything that he knew that I would enjoy. He was just a very generous person.
Yeah, Gordon was fantastic. He was good friends with Joe Eckridge. I met them both almost at the same time. I think I did meet them at the same time. They're from the St. Louis area. And Gordon just recently passed away a couple of years ago and sorely missed. But so that's pretty cool. It's really good. Well, that was a great auction. I wasn't sure how that was going to work, but.
Well, thank you everyone for bidding.
That's great. All right. So without any further ado, we're going to talk. I want to talk to, I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the year, which seems like a long time ago now, with everything that's happened, that I wanted to start a couple of new initiatives here in the Illustrious Clients. And Louise actually has alluded to one of them earlier at the start of the meeting about the Sherlock Holmes history series, where somebody in the club will take on the task of speaking about a significant book or an event or a person, give a little short conversation, 10, 15 minutes. She talked about the annotated, she's going to talk about the annotated Sherlock Holmes at the next dinner meeting. But one of the other initiatives was our Illustrious Clients member interview series, and where I will interview, or you can do anybody here can do an interview with somebody. We interview a member of our club to get to know their history and know their personal story, and because I think that I think we all have a story to tell in this hobby, and I think it's interesting to learn about our fellow club members and friends, and I just think it sounds like fun. So, so this meeting, we're going to kick it off with our friend and co-Illustrious Client member, Mark Walters. So we're going to just talk to Mark. So Mark, I'd like you to all mute your microphones for now until we're done. Maybe we can do a little Q&A at the end, but I'm going to talk to Mark, and we're just going to kind of do this. So Mark, you can hear me, right? Everything's good.
I copy that.
All right. Very good. So, so Mark, you kind of have an interesting background and connection to this club. But first of all, I just want to, before we get right to that, I want to talk about what age did you discover Sherlock Holmes?
Uh,
Oh, wait,
I
wait,
think-
wait. You changed your background, but you don't have enough light on you to make that work.
I don't.
Mm-mm.
Why did it just do that?
I don't know.
That's weird.
It just changed to the sitting room in 220.
Can you see me now?
You're a ghost of a head.
Okay.
Head floating in the middle of the room.
So it's a head in the chair, it looks like. Wow, that's weird.
It's like
Oh,
your head
well,
sitting on top of the table.
you can hear me though, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I was 9 or 10 years old when I first was able to, engage with Sherlock Holmes. I happened to be over in at my grandparents who lived in Philadelphia, and I was in my grandfather's library, and I spotted a book on the shelf called The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. And I don't remember that I had ever heard of that before, but I don't know, for some reason it interested me. So I took it off the shelf and I spent, the time we were at my grandparents' basically reading the adventures. And I remember being particularly fascinated by the engineer's thumb, because he got his thumb cut off, and that was like really cool to a kid, 10 years old. And I remember, where Watson talks about the spongy, knob of where the thumb came off, and that was like, really fascinating. But anyway, that was sort of my intro to Sherlock Holmes.
Now, if I remember correctly, you you lived in England for a while. I mean, actually lived there, not just visited. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I after high school, I graduated 1971. After high school, I didn't want to go right to college. So I worked for a little while, and then I had an opportunity to go visit my sister, who was going to school, she was in school in England. And I went over and stayed with her for a little while, and then ended up staying almost a year and a half. I got a job in a factory up in northern England in Grantham, which is the home of Isaac Newton and Margaret Thatcher. And it was just one of the most wonderful experiences. I mean, these were really working class folks up there in the north, and they embraced me. They were so nice to me. It took me to their pubs. We played darts all the time. It was just great. And I worked in a French fry factory making chips for the Allied Potato Company. But in terms of Holmes, I mean, it was so thrilling for me, because by then I had read all 60 stories. And to go and land in London and get in a cab and see all the brick buildings and the chimneys, and it was just, I don't know, it gives me goosebumps even now thinking about it, how thrilled I was. Even to hear English accents was just kind of an amazing thing. So yeah, I spent a nice amount of time there, and then I came home, and it was time to go to college, time to go to school. And, I continued to read the stories, but I had no real understanding or knowledge that there was a whole Sherlockian world out there, other than my own experience in reading, the stories. I really had no understanding of how much was there in terms of scholarly writings and people interested like I was in the canon.
I always find it amazing. It's hard to remember and to realize, isn't it, that that people do read the stories and enjoy them in total isolation from this hobby that we're steeped in. I always find, whenever I hear that, I'm always kind of amazed. That was never my own situation. I was always aware, very like within a month that there was a club, but so whenever I hear that, I think that's kind of cool. But now you, upon your return to the States, at some point, you had a connection with.
I did.
Yeah. So why don't you just
So let me lay it out because
yeah,
it's
a
kind
good
of
story.
It is. It's kind of fascinating. So I came home. I went to school down in Bloomington, and was still an avid reader of the stories. They were so comforting to me. I don't know. It's just I'm sure many of us feel that way. It's just a comfort to read the stories. It doesn't matter how many times. Anyway, I was during the summers. My father worked at a factory in Indianapolis, in the sales department, and he got me a job there, a summer job, basically as a janitor. And so I was in the executive offices one day, emptying waste baskets, and I'm in this big shot's office, emptying his waste basket, and he goes, "So Mark, I understand you have an interest in Sherlock Holmes." And I said, "Well, yeah, I do." And he said, "Well, I know a lot about Sherlock Holmes. That's great." He was very interested that I was interested. And it was Mike Whalen. And Mike was my dad's boss at the time. And this is back, I don't know, 74 something, 75. And Mike and I sat there, talking about Sherlock Holmes. And Mike really was the first person who opened up the Sherlockian world to me. And told me about all these things that are happening, gave me a whole list of books to read. It was just an amazing thing. And so.
And what year was this?
I think it was around 70. It had to be around 74, 75. So I ended up, finishing college. I didn't do much in terms of, I was now aware that there was a whole world, a Sherlockian world out there, but I wasn't involved in it. But I was still, reading the stories. We ended up moving. I got married. My wife and I moved to California. Then we moved to the East Coast. Then we came back to Indiana. And at that time, we were in Zionsville, and we were going to this church. And I don't know, somehow through somebody knew I had this interest in Sherlock Holmes. And they said, well, you should really talk to this guy named Steve Doyle, because I think he's into Sherlock Holmes. And he goes to this church. And I said, really? So I meet Steve, and, Steve and I, become friends. And Steve is working on me to join the Illustrious Clients, which of course I did. And I come to the first meeting, and there's Mike Whalen. After, decades, there is Mike Whalen, who is now Wiggins, and, a major force in the Sherlockian world. And I don't know, it was sort of one of those Zen things, where it was meant to be or something, because I just felt very grateful that I'd had two really major Sherlockian scholarly people sort of be my friend and help me understand Sherlock Holmes. So it's been a great, friendship, and I still love the canon and all the people as much as I ever have, and it's just been a great run for me.
Well, that's great. That's great, and I think we'll just end your interview there. But I think it's wonderful. Does anybody have any questions for Mark?
I have one.
Sure, Ann.
I know that since were exposed to, all this great Sherlockian literature, you know, from Mike Whalen and from Steve. Have you ever thought about writing something yourself, like an article for the Baker Street Journal or anything?
Oh, you have no idea. I have. I actually, Steve knows this. I have a couple of ideas for.
He's got a really good one, actually.
Yeah, but I'm a little shy about writing, and I worry. But
Don't be shy.
I have the outline. Steve's worked with me a little bit, and now that I've retired, I vowed that I'm going to flush out my idea and put it in writing. So thanks for the question, Anne. I need that.
You need to do it.
I know.
He does need to do it. I didn't know you had two ideas. I only know about one, and it's good.
Yeah.
It's good. It's interesting and unique.
Yeah.
So, anybody else have any questions for Mark on his Sherlockian journey to the Illustrious Clients?
By the way, I think this is a great idea, Steve. I'd love to hear other people's experience, you know, how they grew to know and love Sherlock Holmes. I really think it's a great idea.
Thanks. I do too. I just, you know, we all get here somehow, but it's not the same path. And I think that's really interesting. And we all have different, you know, interests within the hobby too, you know, and like Mike McSwiggan is a chronologist. And I only recently learned that. So between him and Vince, you know, they're probably gonna crack that.
So yeah, we're thinking of doing a sub-scion of the most mentally ill members of the client.
I find chronology like makes my eyes cross. I mean, I respect people who do it, but it's like let me take on the biggest challenge in the whole hobby.
I love it, but even I can only do it for a few hours at a time, and yeah, you got to get out of that hole.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I'm glad that you all think it's a great idea. I think it is too. I mean, you know, the most interesting, you know, I think everybody's got an interesting story. So
Well, it helps us to learn about our fellow members. Or, you know, you can't talk to everybody at every meeting. So
right, that's my goal. Is, you know, 6 times a year and planning meetings too. We all come together, but we only know each other that much. I mean, I know many of you much more than that, but you know, it helps. I think it's great. So thank you, Mark. That was wonderful. And so if anybody wants to take that on next time, don't be surprised if I just ask you, can I interview you? Because I will do that. So look out. All right, it's time for some Sherlockian toasts and then we're going to do a quiz, which I ridiculously sent out the answers with, and then and then we'll do a story discussion, and then that will probably conclude our meeting. Okay, so where's my toast? I'm going to go first because I've got the biggest challenge in the toast. Let's just be real. I'm toasting Steve Dixie. So hang on a minute here. Where'd I go? Okay, so if you you know the story, right? You all read the story, correct? All right. Here's my toast to Steve Dixie. Here's to Steve Dixie the Bruiser from a story that's really a loser. A target of hate. He's a man from the States. Hey, maybe he's even a Hoosier. He burst in to 221, and man, that scene was really not fun. Holmes sounds like the Klan, and wow, man, oh man, after that passage, I'm done. Here's to Steve Dixie.
Here, here.
All right.
We need to drink after that.
Yeah, woo, no doubt. Okay. Yes. So I don't think Cassie made it. I don't think she's here. She was going to do a toast tonight, but Sandra Klein, were you able to come up with a toast?
Hello. Yes.
All right.
Oh, let's see here. I have to read it. Otherwise, I could be here for hours. See, I'd like to mention Mrs. Isadora Klein tonight. She being the beautiful dark-eyed woman in mourning, who sadly made some very costly mistakes. First, being caught up in a whirlwind romance initiated by a young scoundrel with an ambition for wealth. Seeing him for what he was, she quickly and heartbreakingly called it off. Secondly, if that wasn't enough, she was then subjected to nonsensical bullying that caused her to unfairly provide the financial means for, get this, the scoundrel's mother, to fulfill her lifetime dream to travel the world. Life is so unfair sometimes. I really, really do feel sorry for the nice lady. I thought she was, she's beautiful, dark-eyed, soulful. Let's lift our glasses in a toast to poor dear Mrs. Klein, who hopefully was able to get past her misfortunes, leave them behind her, and start a new life in peace and tranquility. To Mrs. Klein.
Here,
Boo.
All right. And Lewis, were you up for Douglas Maberley?
Yes, I am. I'm up for Douglas Maberley. I just got to get that up on my screen. Hold on a second, because I got to read it. Okay. Hold on a second here. Okay. I'd like to toast Douglas Maberley, a fellow writer and author. As a writer, he did a number of things right that I want to share. First, Mark Twain is credited with saying, "Write what you know." While this isn't always true, you can mine your experiences to create a good story. It also isn't always true that everyone has a novel in them. I know people like to say that, but that's not really the case. However, most people do have some unique experiences they can capitalize on. Mr. Maberley was smart enough to do that. Second, a computer guy that I know, my husband, likes to say, to go forward, you must back up, meaning always save and back up your work. Mr. Maberley was smart enough to actually make 2 copies of his manuscript at a time when he'd have to do that by hand. Now, I personally say he should have sent his second copy to his publisher right away without holding on to it. That way Isadora would never have gotten her hands on it. Sadly, he didn't have time to copy it a 3rd time. It's really too bad he didn't have Microsoft Word or photocopy machine. Likely then Isadora would have been totally toast. But I give him credit for trying and for being an author to start with. It's really too bad this book never saw print, as I'm sure it would have been a saucy read. To Douglas Maberley.
Here, here.
Here, here.
Here, here.
Well, we had a couple other toasts. The other toast was going to be by Mike Schaefer, and that was going to be for Langdale Pike, but neither Cassie or Mike are here this evening. I'm not sure if maybe they just couldn't connect. Possible. So we'll call that all the toasts for the evening. But that does bring us to the quiz. So you all have your quiz, correct? Here, I don't. So Larry, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're unmuted now.
Yes, I can.
All right, I'll let you conduct the quiz.
Okay. Let me get back to it so I can actually read it. Okay, we have had a few of the individuals in the quiz toasted tonight, positively and negatively, but whatever. But the quiz of the Adventure of the Three Gables. Question number 1, everybody ready? When Steve Dixie, you remember him, first appears, what colors are his clothes? And how do you want to answer these, Steve?
I would just, Don.
In a gray checked suit with a salmon colored tie.
That is correct. feel like we're on Celebrity Squares here. Or
I know,
something.
right?
Just need the wisecrack comics down in the lower right corner. But okay.
Was there a mention of the suit being loud?
Well, I asked the colors. I didn't necessarily.
Okay, no other descriptive adjectives. That's all right.
No.
Go ahead.
It was indeed a loud suit. As
Loud check.
yeah, not a fine houndstooth, but yeah. Anyway. Okay, still on Steve. Who was Steve Dixie's immediate boss in the Spencer John gang? And I didn't ask you for the Spencer John name, but he was in the gang. Who was his immediate boss?
Arnie,
Who has the answer?
Steve, you could just pick somebody at random and put them on the spot.
I could. And does anybody have the answer?
Barney Stockdale.
Barney Stockdale.
That is correct, Barney Stockdale.
Yeah, Alexis is waving her hand.
Okay. Well, yeah, I can't control her. Steve's got to control.
You can wave your hand if you have the answer.
Yeah, I think she was. Okay, Douglas Maberley was toasted earlier, both as a money-grabbing fortune seeker and as a budding author. But what was his actual occupation or position in life? What did he do for a living?
Shelley.
He was the attaché at Rome.
Correct.
Well done.
And next question, who was Douglas's father and why did Holmes know the name or know it?
Oh, Alexis was.
Yeah,
I
Alexis.
see Alexis down there.
Alexis is waving her hand.
Well, it's Kira, but it's
Oh,
we're
I'm
using
sorry.
Alexis' computer. It's fine. Mortimer Maberley, he was a previous client of Holmes.
That is correct.
Kara, we were thrown by the you. Sorry.
It's fine. Lexi has better internet than I do, so.
Okay.
Poor Kara can't catch a break. She's been mistaken for me and Lexi today.
Okay. Number 5, what was Mary Maberley owned the Three Gables. Who was what was the occupation of the previous owner of the Three Gables? I see Pam down there.
He was a sea captain.
That's correct. He was a sea captain. Anybody remember his name?
Kara remembers.
Ferguson.
Right. No points for that, but yeah, just a good warm feeling. Okay.
Give her some points. Go ahead.
Now, we didn't have a toast for Langdale Pike. I suppose we were supposed to, but anyway. What was his area of expertise?
If he was an attorney.
He was a gossip.
No, gossip columnist.
Gossip columnist, yeah.
Yeah, he was the TMZ of his time.
Sort of, yeah. I don't know that he was a columnist, but he just amassed all the information. I don't think he published it.
He did say, Watson did say that he supposedly earned 4 figures for the columns and
Well, that's
paragraphs.
true. That is true.
That's right.
I think, yeah, I missed that point, or I neglected that point. You're right. Okay, shifting people here. How was Susan, Mary Maberley's servant, discovered to be listening when Mary and Holmes were talking?
She was breathing loudly.
Breathing heavy outside the door.
Wheezing.
Anne and Mark were both.
Wheezing.
Several people saying wheezing there.
Yes.
Okay, and what was her last name?
Stockdale.
Married to Barney.
Right. She was married to Barney Stockdale, so her last name would have been Stockdale. And what is the local police inspector's name?
should. I just read that. I don't know.
If I see some waving down there.
Mark's waving.
Mark's waving.
Wasn't mentioned.
That's right. Trick question. His name is never given.
Oh.
I see some anguish over there.
So if none of us got that one, then we all got it right.
Well, somebody got that right. Okay. All right. What page number of Douglas Maberley's unpublished novel was not burned?
Dot.
275.
Can you say that again?
Repeat that, please.
275.
Incorrect.
Mark.
245.
245.
Rat.
My wife cheated. She gave me the answer.
Don, go back to 0. Okay.
How to tell when you cheat?
To what destination or to where would Mary Maberley like to travel?
Around the world.
Around the world, yeah.
Around the world. Correct. I always think of Yogi Berra with that kind of an answer. Somebody offered him a trip around the world and he said, "No thanks, I'd rather go somewhere else."
Thanks for that.
Okay. How did Watson, switching to Isadora Klein, how did Watson describe Isadora's footmen?
Kara.
Machine-like.
Yep. Machine-like. Nicely done.
That would be like a robot.
I mean, you're not going to argue with, yeah.
Now, do you get the bonus questions after you find out if there's a tie?
The bonus will come in here.
Okay.
Okay. And where did Isadora live?
Don.
In a corner house in the West End. In other words, Mayfair.
Okay, correct. West End was what I was looking for. You probably know, Kira?
I have Grosvenor Square because I think that's what.
Grosvenor Square.
Yeah.
Grosvenor Square.
That's in the West End.
Okay.
Will that count or just West End?
Yeah.
Okay.
If it is mentioned, I didn't remember the street being mentioned, but maybe it was. Okay. And in what field did Isadora's deceased husband amass his wealth?
Sugar.
Someone said sugar. Who
Somebody
was it?
said it.
Yeah. He was a sugar broker. German.
He was the Sugar King.
Shelley got it.
Excellent.
Shelley got it? Okay.
This Gold King should have known the Sugar King, but I forgot.
Yeah, don't the kings know each other? Don't the kings pals? All right.
And one more. Well, actually a couple more.
Oh.
How did Watson portray Isadora's transformation when Holmes mentioned Scotland Yard? I see a hand.
Kira's hands up.
Kira's hands up.
From steel to velvet.
Correct. Steel to velvet.
I just
And
said
to
she
continue the
became more
punishment.
cooperative. Is that satisfactory?
Now, the exact phrase is from steel to velvet. That's
Okay.
specifically what I was looking for.
All right.
That's the direct quote. And since you need some more punishment, one bonus question before we get to a tiebreaker if we need it. Mary Maberley's house is in Harrow Weald. What is a weld?
Forest.
Woodland forest.
Woodland, yeah, it's an Old English word for woodland. Forest would be accurate as well.
I think it's pronounced weald.
It may well be. I didn't look up the pronunciation. I will, admit to a failing there.
And I'm not sure about the wooded part, but it's a remote area.
Yeah. But it is an Old English word for woodland.
Harrow's not remote, though. It's on the Bakerloo line.
Yeah, it's not remote anymore.
Right.
It's north of beautiful downtown London.
Yeah, it's at the north side of Greater London.
Right,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think the Old English word referred to things kind of out in the country or whatever.
Yeah.
So, before we go to the tiebreaker, go ahead and, I guess, count your correct answers. There were 16 potentials there. A couple of them had half pointers. The colors had half point, and the Mortimer previous client was a half point each. And then the bonus question would give you 16 possible points.
Everybody got 16.
So, Steve, you want to?
So who got 16? Shelley did. Anybody else? All right.
Kira didn't.
Pardon me?
Kira didn't. She seemed to be having answers every time.
Shelley gets first place. Anybody have 15?
I do.
And Kira's 15.
Good.
Kara's 15. And anybody?
Yeah, I'm not counting weald because I had it down as wooded or uncultivated country.
Does anybody have 14? 13? 12?
Well,
Don, all right. Don has 12. All right, so we have a first, second, and third place. Okay, so Shelley, here's our fabulous prizes today.
Hello. Can I say something?
Yes.
Yes, I had 14, but I don't need any prizes. But the one I missed is the local police inspector's name, the trick question. I missed that one.
Trick question.
Yeah,
Okay.
number 9.
If you had no answer, that's actually the right answer.
Oh, all right then. I left it blank. And,
Okay.
And I also missed number 12. I said military and soldier-like instead of machine-like. But at any rate, so yeah.
Okay, so Shelley, here's our first. You get a choice. Okay. The first thing is this book called Sherlock Holmes versus Dracula by Lauren Esselman. It's a great.
It's actually pretty good.
As
It's actually
ridiculous as it
it's actually a
sounds-
pretty good book.
It's actually
as
pretty good.
ridiculous
Yeah.
as it sounds, it's pretty good.
Lousy title, but a pretty good book. Yeah.
Yeah.
I read
Okay,
it.
that's
That's
first
an
thing.
excellent book.
The second thing is, another book called. This was published sometime. When was this published? Oh my gosh. This is called Sherlock Holmes Bridge Detective Returns. So I don't know if you play bridge or not, but that's an option. Third pick is a check. This is kind of cool and collectible. A checklist of the Arthur Conan Doyle collection in the Metropolitan Toronto Library. It's a catalog. And what's interesting about it is it's undoubtedly out of date now, but it's kind of collectible. It was one of the first major catalogs ever put together of a major public Sherlockian collection. And what's cool is to just read it and just see what they have. It's amazing. This is probably for a more hardcore collector. And then finally, we have this, the Scotland Yard game. It's a board game. called Scotland Yard, and it's unopened, still as new.
That's a great game. That's a
And
great game.
this game dates, it's vintage. It dates from 1985. So, so as our quiz winner tonight, you get your pick.
I think I gotta go with the board game.
All right, very good. Good choice.
Great, thank
Okay, you get the board game. And Kara, you get your choice of the other items. Do you have a pick?
The catalog.
All right, catalog. And Don, you're downsizing. I don't know.
You're
You're
muted.
muted.
Don.
No prize for me, thank you.
All right. Okay, well, we'll save these for future reference. I'm glad
Maybe Tony can have it.
Does Tony want one? Tony had 14.
She said she didn't
You're
want
muted,
one,
Tony.
but no, yes.
I know that I'm muted. I
Oh.
had to get to the thing there. I had to go to this laptop because I got shut out 6 times. It just would fail on my big computer. No, I don't need a prize. Thank you very much.
Okay, these will just go back into the vast prize reservoir that's sitting out in our garage. and Shelley and Carol, we'll as soon as we can, we'll get these prizes to you. I'll set them aside so they don't vanish. And well done, everybody, and thank you for not cheating. All right, so let's have a story discussion of the story here, the Three Gables. Let's just address the elephant in the room right out of the gate. We have a Steve Dixie problem in this story.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, but I basically pretty much hate this story.
Yeah.
It's like the sore thumb in the entire canon. And
You didn't like Steve?
I'm assuming that you all have read it, but it's that encounter between Steve Dixon who bursts into Baker Street and has this unflattering conversation with Holmes, who is sounding, it's the most racist sounding thing you could, it's terrible. And so I'm just interested in what your thoughts on this are.
Mr. Holmes.
Well, I know it's not a very popular opinion, but I think Conan Doyle was a bigot. We like to think of our heroes as good and solid statues on pedestals, but they all have feet of clay. Conan Doyle had a couple. When he went around the bend and to spiritualism, he, in my opinion, negated an awful lot of the great that he did by creating and writing the Holmes stories. He did not finish his life on a high note in that regard.
Well, did he change his opinion? Because initially, he wrote The Yellow Face.
Yeah, I was gonna say the yellow face.
So
Make him a bigot.
yeah, it's kind of like.
Well, that's kind of harsh.
Well,
You've got a good point, but
in the time.
he did recognize it as a social problem, but a lot of Britain did. They'd outlawed slavery by the time Conan Doyle was writing Sherlock Holmes. They were many, many decades ahead of us. And attitudes about race were far more liberal there than here.
2.5 decades ahead of us.
So I think he was a little behind the times.
And about the yellow face, I have read some commentary about yellow face and this story, saying, well, in the yellow face, it was a child, a defenseless child, and that was different from an adult, particularly a prize fighter.
Yeah.
That explains maybe the difference between the treatment and yellow face, but it's really hard to excuse the attitudes. It's why one of the main reasons I hate this story is that this is not my Sherlock Holmes. This isn't the Holmes. No, this isn't the Holmes in the other 63 stories. It's just.
It's interesting that you bring up the yellow face, and I am not a Doyle historian, so I'm curious what other people think, and maybe I'm totally off base. But so you have the yellow face, and I just double checked the date to make sure. So that is pre-1900, whereas obviously this is one of the last stories at the end of his career. What happened between the time period of the yellow face and this story in real life? And it's what got Conan Doyle the Sir in front of his name. He really beat the drum pretty hard for the Boer War. And I have always wondered if that actually took his more kind of progressive ideology and turned it around some. I have nothing to back that up with, but I'm kind of curious.
Well, people can change their mind.
Sure.
Right. He wrote, like you said, Mike, he wrote Yellowface as a young man who had not really traveled. And, I hate to even go here, but by the time he wrote this story, he'd done extensive traveling in America. And I'm wondering if his firsthand exposure in this country didn't have some, maybe the Boer War too, didn't have some negative experience, influence on him. Because there's a clear difference when it comes to what he wrote. It wasn't, Pat, you said it was a child, but it wasn't just a child. It was also a white woman who married a black man.
Mm-hmm.
And which was
one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great story. And it was not a story that was not a custom that was common or approved of. It was not it was just, it was extremely unusual. I think it was a little more tolerated in England, perhaps, than certainly in America. But, there are a lot of people who had real feelings about that. And to show that sort of enlightened attitude early in life, and then here toward the end of his, this is a few years before he died, really, he's writing this, this, and it's.
I have a comment.
Yeah, Louise.
Okay, and I'm not trying to be a Doyle apologist or anything, but this is at the end of all his writing, and he was really tired of this, and everything was, he's just slapdashing off stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in some ways, and granted, I mean, this is not to say that he didn't have some, racial bias, but he was just looking for a thug to fill a role in this story, and this popped in his head. Just, okay, here's a thug, and I'll describe him this way. And I need some sort of a dandy guy who would fall for this wealthy woman, so I'll write him in. I mean, I think this was all kind of a cut and paste, really poor story, and
yeah, it is.
Made these people fit the roles.
Mary had something to say. She raised her hand.
Yes. The thing about this story that I would like to see is a whole line of pastiches with Langford Pike. I have a feeling that could be a really cool, because it's still in the copyright. I think isn't this story still under copyright?
Barely,
but I'm just hoping that some of you pastiche writers out there, and I would love to get this out to others. He seems like a character that would be lush with backstories and stories you could tell, a whole different, side of, not necessarily mysteries, but intrigue and gossip and stuff. I'm just thinking this is a character that needs to be expanded. And I can't wait for the copyright on that one to drop and everybody start writing stories.
Well, maybe I'll take that challenge. Let's see.
Hey, and I wasn't particularly. I was going to discuss that with you when the next time we were able to have tea at Tina's, but for others out there, and I'm going to plant that seed with others too, because I think that would be a character that would have a lush background.
Who's talking? Oh, Mary.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Can
I just find this.
Can I add
Anybody else have anything? Yeah. Yes.
I don't know that I want to be a Doyle apologist, but he has given me a lot of pleasure in his stories. And I thought I should say one good thing about him. If we want to write him off as a racist, we should remember that he took the case of Mr. Idalgi to court, and he stood up for him when he was accused of mutilating cattle. So this was in his own life. He was practicing something that would be considered a non-racist action in a time when Pakistanis and Indians and Africans were all considered one race. So I don't know that he was that, I think he was more enlightened than this story represents.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I would agree with that too. I think that's a very good point you make.
I don't think anybody is one thing. I think everybody's complicated, and I think he's complicated. This was a slapdash, mistake on his part.
Maybe
and,
just didn't play the way
I think these are just caricatures. He just used.
He was just caricatures. Yeah, he didn't do his normal work. He creates these beautiful, vibrant characters, and he didn't do what he normally does, and it shows.
Yeah, and this story is it's not a good story. It's not structured well, and it just ends. It's like there's no real conclusion to it. It just, okay, I've run out of, or I've done the amount. It's like an essay from a kid. Okay, I have written 100 words. Done. It's over.
Yeah.
And it's just not good.
Cal, you had something to say?
I was just wondering if anyone knew anything about the prize fighters of the day, and if they were like a particular mixed bag, or if they were predominantly like one race or another, because it's occurred to me that I've run into in other fiction prize fighters that seem to primarily be African American. I don't know if it's just something from that time, and it's not something I've searched into. But
one of the things I can say, my grandfather, back in the 20s, he was a wrestler, professional wrestler, and back then it was just as goofy as it is now. Okay, but he was like the mass Marvel take all
bruiser.
Yeah, he was the mass Marvel take all comers. He wrestled a bear once. I mean, my grandpa was crazy, all right? But one thing he did tell me about those kind of sports, especially the pugilist, my grandpa was also a fighter, he was a pugilist as well. And he says there was one sport where African Americans could really start and make their way, was prize fighting in the beginning. That was one of the first sports that had African Americans fighting. Or playing. If you can, they didn't play in baseball, they didn't play in football, at least not in the major leagues. They had their own leagues, and of course it was segregated. And that was one of the few sports that was actually integrated. You had like Joe Louis, the boxer, going against, so you had famous pugilists who were African American. It was one of the few sports that was actually integrated. You didn't really see too many other sports where they were. And that was, of course, that's a sign of the times. I mean, you had, like Woodrow Wilson, showing films like
Birth of a Nation.
I mean, he was the one that segregated our military, because it wasn't.
Yes.
And so, there was a very strong racial thing going on, especially among those who were elite class. And he might have, who knows? But yes, it was very much a segregated thing. And boxing was one sport they could do.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about the plot, because what do you all think of the plot of The Three Gables? Does it sound familiar, or does it sound plausible? I mean, what were your thoughts about the plot of the story itself?
He reused that baby.
Well, if you're going to plagiarize, you might as well plagiarize from yourself.
Steve?
Yeah.
Okay. I think some of the characters, and this is not worded well, but some of the characters are dumb. In that here's a woman who goes to trouble to hire Holmes to get his advice to help her because she has this unusual circumstance. And then he gives her advice and she immediately ignores it. And of course, later she says, oh, if only I'd done what you said. Well, why would you spend money and then just so quickly write it off, as to what he said to do? And everything about that just seemed real lame. I don't know if it was lame writing or if it was lame on the part of the character or both, but that seemed really flat because the only reason she had this problem was because she ignored what she had just paid somebody, in theory, to tell her to do. Not only that, he asked her if there was anything new in the house and she couldn't remember that they just delivered packages. Yeah, there's that too. Good point.
Anybody else?
I guess one thing that kind of stood out to me when they introduced Isadora toward the end of the book, I just couldn't help but think of the line from Murder by Death, where the guy's complaining about he introduced a character in the last 10 pages that were not anywhere else in the book. It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That's not really playing fair.
Yeah. Well, this story, it seems like all of the characters are either stupid or really unattractive, and frequently both. It's just no one seems to come up well.
To me,
including Holmes.
Yeah, to me, this story felt like character assassination of Sherlock Holmes. I mean, we start with him making the incredibly racist comments. We get to the end, and why are we giving Isadora Klein a pass? She wasn't a very nice person.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to make a comment about the tone of the story. One of the reasons why, there's a lot to not like in this story. I think this whole story is just kind of vulgar, we've talked about how it's got these kind of racial overtones. I think it's cheap, and the language and the dialogue is snarky and violent, and the plot is, who cares? The plot is driven by some aging cougar who beds on these young guys, and one of them, but who cares? It's like, and and when you think about just the tone of this and the plot and all this, how like you've all mentioned slapdash or just knocked off. You try to imagine this being nestled there right there along with other stories like in the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, like right between the Red-Headed League and the Engineer's Thumb. It would be a sore thumb. We'd all get to that and go, what the hell is this? It's just, and I think it reflects the fact that it's in the case book and it's written pretty far into the 1920s. I think, the world had gotten a lot cheaper and more vulgar and coarse. And I think somebody said that Conan Doyle was really kind of over it, He's just sort of knocking these things out. I just think it's really, I just pretty much every bit of this I don't like.
Yeah.
Tell us how you really feel, Steve.
I don't even like Langdale Pike. I know that Holmes has the idea.
We didn't see Langdale Pike. I wanted to see Langdale
We don't
Pike.
see him. No, we don't see him. But we do. But here we are. We're not going to. I can see hobnobbing with the underworld characters or criminals or whatever. But there's something inherent to me now. As I'm just speaking for myself. There's something inherently unwholesome about somebody who makes his living gossiping about people.
Yeah.
That's only a half notch away from Charles Augustus Milverton in my book. So I just hate everything about this story. And, so that's how I feel about it. So.
And, I found it difficult that Holmes knew so much about the Maberley family, and they're not. It struck me that it's not the sort of part of society that he usually hangs around with. But also, my view of the story, I know, is also hampered by the Granada version, which is not. This is not a good. This is not a good Granada adaptation even, and that was. I remember the actor playing Douglas Maberley was eating up the sceneries just like a ham. I mean, it was really not good. So, but yeah, it's just as I said before, nobody is acting the way they usually do. It's just doesn't even seem to be a Sherlock Holmes story.
On the one hand, we're supposed to believe that Holmes does know Douglas Maberley, met him or knew of him, or he was such a bon vivant or something. I don't understand what he was supposed to be, and yet Holmes doesn't seem to figure out immediately what the problem is, or that that's part of it. He also doesn't know that he died. Now I'm thinking it would have been in the Times if somebody who was an attaché in Rome died, and yet he didn't pick that up. It's just everything's off.
Yeah.
Tony wanted to say something.
Yeah, I want to point out, why is he going to let the Duke of Lomond? I feel sorry for this guy. Seems like he should be protected from this bad person whose great ambition in life is to marry an aristocrat, apparently. And another thing is, I wanted to find out how much, which I hope I can read this, 5,000 pounds would be. And in 1900, it would be worth 623,000, about that.
Oh.
Yeah. Pounds. So that, is quite a bit. Because the pounds were worth a lot more dollars then. So yeah. It's a fabulous sum.
Wow.
Another thing that bothered me was the guy's death was so vague. Did he just have, I finished my novel, my heart's broken, now I'm going to die?
Well, I may get pneummonia.
He said pneumonia.
Well, yeah, but he got pneumonia. She said he'd been depressed, and I may be misquoting it, but she implied that his heart was broken before he got the pneumonia. I don't know. It just seemed
he didn't take care of himself.
Yeah, well,
he was beaten up.
He wasn't quarantined.
Yeah. He was heartbroken. He was stuck in his crappy story.
Well, I don't know that he was so heartbroken. I think he was heartbroken more because he missed out on his opportunity to take advantage of that old cougar with all her money. I think he was more heartbroken about that. I mean, maybe I'm just seeing some other side of it, but I think that, Mrs. Klein, she did what she could do in that time, and because she strived to be wealthy and aristocrat rather than be, like a cleaning maid or something. I don't falter. I really can't. In those days and today maybe, but in those days and times there wasn't a whole lot of choices for women, and because she was a little more ambitious to go for the gold.
She never had to work again. She already had a lot of money. It was the social
Well, she wanted to have fun too. Why fault her for having fun with young, guys? I don't know. I think that's kind of, I think that's kind of biased. So
yeah, and I'm not even knocking her for that. It's just like, it's the, she's not like the woman in Thor Bridge, who was totally psycho. And she's not like that. She was just living her life, but it just seems like
she had an edge to her. Yeah, she definitely had she carried a knife in her pocket.
Yeah, true. I don't know. It just seems like.
Well, indeed, had she married the Duke, she would have increased her social standing, and moved up into the peerage, if you will, or at least upper social thing, which is probably what she wanted, to be, she's got the money, but this gives her the prestige. Now, my problem with Isadora is that the way she was going about trying to get Douglas's stuff was blatantly obvious. And it's just, it showed no sense of, am I going to make them suspicious? It just very bludgeonedly or handedly. And the Landale Pike thing was just a Doyle thinking, oh, I've got to figure out some way that Holmes gets some knowledge here. And okay, here's a guy I can just drop in, and so be it. Without any effort.
I think the other thing that bugged me about this story is that Holmes doesn't really do anything. I mean, there's not, he just, what's he, he goes to her house, I mean, I don't know. There's no detecting going on. He's just kind of walking through he's like walking across the stage, and I don't know. You can tell this is like,
It was a limp story. That was terrible.
Which story do you dislike more, this or the Mazarin Stone?
Oh, I think I hate this more.
Yeah, this one more.
Yeah, I think the Mazarin Stone is I mean, it's weak, but I find that story I find the history of that story interesting, and not for its own intrinsic sake, but this story just is a misfire in every way. Every bit of this story just is a misfire. So
I think the greedy one was what was it, Mrs. Mabel? Was it Maberley? Maberley. I think she got the greedy bug because if someone comes and offers you whatever you want for your house and everything in it, she probably thought, well, maybe there's something even more valuable there. And that's why she sought counsel, because she thought, well, maybe, I don't know, I think she had a little bit of a greedy bug on her.
That could very well be.
Because if somebody says, oh, I'll give you, what would you like for that vase? And you're like, well, 25. Oh, that's all? Well, then all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm not sure I want to sell it, because then you're going to find out how much it's worth, or maybe there's some secret, or there's, wanted the greed. But she did get her money. She got her $600,000 worth.
Yeah, but she didn't change her mind until the guy indicated that she was going to have to leave her personal possessions behind. That was when she really changed her mind.
And you can't blame her. It's a lifetime of her acquiring things, and Douglas's things, and her husband's things, and so on.
Exactly.
Well, that could be
A lot of personal stuff in the house that she doesn't want to give up, and you can't blame her for that.
Yeah.
Right. I think it was more when it got down to it might be her jewelry and her clothing and all that kind of stuff that she really kind of got scared.
Mm-hmm. So when I read this one, because I always read them this way, I read Baring Gould's annotated version because that was my first Sherlockian text. And so there's a note at the end of the story about the canosity of this particular story, and it's being called into question that this and the Mazarin Stone were clearly written by the same person that wants to make Holmes out as a joker, and it doesn't ring true to being written by Watson if we're going to play that game. And I just wondered what other people thought.
I would like to think.
Agree.
I would like to think it's not part of the canon, because it's as I've said several times here, nobody is acting the way they usually act. It's this. So I would like to think it's not part of the canon. I don't know if I can make an argument for that, but that's certainly how I feel.
In fact, I would make an argument. We toss these two out. We take The Man with the Watches and The Lost Special, which are two apocryphal stories. You're
right. They're better stories.
That's what I do.
All I know is that I read Sherlock Holmes versus Dracula thinking that it was going to be terrible schlock because of the title, and I loved it. And then I read this, which was an actual Conan Doyle story, and I went, oh, So I do think if we bump it out, maybe we ought to slide Sherlock Holmes versus Dracula in here.
Under a different title. Oh, wait, the subtitle of that book is The Adventure of the Sanguinary Count.
Right.
That is a great title. That's
Yeah, but the average person that's walking by in the bookstore and doesn't know what sanguinary count is will go, oh, cool, Sherlock Holmes versus Dracula. And of course, I'd grown up watching Sammy Terry. That's the only reason I picked up that book. And then I thought it would be awful, and it wasn't.
This
That's
other
a
one,
title that I-
Holmes and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Holmes is pretty darn good too. You
Oh, I
should
haven't
try
read that.
Oh, you should read that one. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to find a copy.
Yeah, it's really good. Yes.
Yeah. Does it occur to anyone here that we have put more thought into the story than Doyle did?
yeah.
That's a really good point.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm
If
sure
he'd
that's
started
the
writing
case.
this, if he'd started writing the story when we started this discussion, he would have finished first. Well, I think that's a good sign to end the discussion. So thank you, everybody. That actually worked out really well. That was great.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the end of our meeting tonight. It's our first and hopefully last Zoom group meeting. We will have a planning meeting on Zoom, but I think given everything, this was kind of great. So I want to say thanks to everybody for coming. This was really super. So as always, we conclude every meeting with a reading of 221B. And Sandra Klein, you are up to do that. Are you prepared?
Oh, yes, I am. I have to
All
read
right.
it as well.
Okay.
All right. Here dwell together two men of note, who never lived so can never die. How very near they seem, yet how remote. That age before the world went all awry. But still the game's afoot for those with ears, attuned to catch the distant view. Halloo. England is England yet, for all our fears. Only those things the heart believes are true. A yellow fog swirls past the window pane, as night descends upon this fabled street. A lonely hansom splashes through the rain. The ghostly lamps fall at 20 feet. Here the world explode. These two survive, and it is always 1895.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Steve. It was a great idea and great meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody who joined, and it was wonderful. It was so good to see you all and interact.
Oh, yes.
And
this was great.
All of us with our long hairdos.
Mal's barefoot for life.
Hi, Peep.